We're picking up where the last video left off, which was decreasing the crown and closing the top of the crown with a blunt darning needle. Now we're going to sew it up, and because of the way I knitted it, 97 stitches, it's a 2x2 rib with a 1 stitch edge, making sure that this is the outside. I'll be sewing them up. The stitch markers were put on the last row before the decrease, and so that I know that those two go together, because it's quite tricky on the crown to exactly see where you're working. So on the crown, it's just a rough guess of which row matches up with which row, and I weave across. Slipped off. I weave basically back and forth. Go to the next stitch, pick it up, go to the next stitch, and go back and forth like that. I do quite tight on the crown. And then now I've got to make sure these two are matched up. So where am I? I'll just go across all three. And I'll go to the other side. Now when I'm working on the other side, and if I see I might have a bit of a gap there, I'm not shy to go back and anchor it in place. Okay, it's anchored in place, and these two are now opposite each other. I can take them out. And then what I'll be doing is going to the next one. And on this side, here, I'm working in the third loop, not the fourth one, which is tucked underneath. I work in the third loop. First loop, second loop, third loop. If you look at how the stitches lie, there's one there, there's another two here. I'm not working in the fourth, I'm working in the third. And on this side, you can see it's made out of 2 loops, this particular stitch. I don't work on the edge loop, I work on the first loop that is facing the inside, if that makes any sense. I'm hoping it's going to become apparent as I work. So I'm picking up, this one's a little bit tricky. You can see it's gone a bit skew. The edge loop and then the third loop. It's always hard, that part where you're going from the decrease to the main body of the work. Picking up the third loop on that side. The most important place to keep your eye on is the side here, because the third loop, if you're not concentrating, before you know it, you're picking up the fourth one. And then ideally one would undo it and start again. I don't tug it hard like I did the crown. I want it to be a very soft join, because I want it to be as invisible as possible. I'm not letting it gape, but I'm not letting it become very tight. I'm just pulling the yarn. Once it's through like that, I'm leaving it. Not giving it an extra tug. Pulling it through. Now, depending on how long the tail is for my start work, will make a difference as to how far I go down. Because it's always good to work at least 5 centimeters from the bottom, so one can work this tail away without going right to the bottom edge. It all depends on that tail. Be careful, because sometimes psychologically, if I see that my yarn is running out, I might pull a bit tighter. So I have to watch myself. I have enough yarn. It's a good thing I took 3/4 instead of half an arm. It's better to play on the safe side. Okay, so now I'm about an inch and a half from the bottom. And this is where I wanted to start using this one. I prefer to do it with a sharp pointed needle. So if I have the option of having a sharp pointed needle available, which I do, I'll use that, because I want to split the yarn here at the bottom. Now I need to find that very, very bottom knot. It's there. One can sometimes mistake it and do it here, or can do it there. So one needs to look at the makeup of the stitches and find that very first knot. And what I do is I go into that very first knot. Of course, the way that you cast on will influence the way where your knots are. So I've gone into there, and I'm going to the other side. You can see where the yarn came out. There's another knot. I go in there. When I was sewing up hats for preemies, one has to be very careful not to form a seam that they can sleep on, which is very uncomfortable. So if you want to, if it was for a preemie or a newborn even, you can put a little bow here. This will be the front of the hat, but because it's invisible, it doesn't matter. And then you know that the baby's not going to sleep on the seam, because the little bow will either be in the front or to the side, as it will be a little decoration. So now that I've done that, I will just go back to the other side. It doesn't have to be in the knot. But what I want to do is I want to break the threads up, so it's really gripped in, because there will be a certain amount of tension on this little seamy thing here when the person puts the hat on and off, on and off, on and off. So there we go. And come back once more. I'm happy with that. I'll just work it away. First loop and third loop. Okay, it's in there. Now, because this breaks up the loops, I don't want to sew up the hat with that, because it becomes very obvious when you broken it up. If it was for a preemie, then I would work on the very, very edges. I would work with that loop and I'd work with that loop. But this is not for a preemie, so there can be a little bit of the seam on the inside. It's for a child. That's why I don't mind the seam. Third loop. Right, you see I made a mistake there. I must do the third loop. I know it's finicky, but I'm being a little bit pedantic, but it's okay. There we go. Third loop. And then the first loop on this side. First loop. Third loop. I know it's confusing when I say first loop, but it's a first loop from the inside of the work, facing that way. It's a first loop, just as this is the third loop facing that way. And then I work all the way up to where the other yarn is, and then I'm going to cross over. So I have the luxury of a nice long tail for my starter work. So now here I'm crossing over. See, he's coming out. I'm going in. Oop, just came a bit loose. So there's an actual crossover. It's just the way I like to do it. I now take both tails to the wrong side of the work. This is a beanie and not a bonnet. If it was a bonnet, bonnet basically is exactly the same pattern, but it's much longer. Then when you fold it up, you would see those. And if I have a bonnet, I always make sure when my cast on, I have a very long tail, and I work my tail all the way up to there. So even if the person folds it over, you are not going to see the tail. It's all the way inside here. And if this was for a little tiny baby, then there'd probably be a decent fold over. So this is actually a little bit too low. So that's one inside. See, because I know where's my outside. I can also check there, because you want to sew away these tails on the inside. So just double check, because it's quick to make a mistake. Just taking it to the other side. And now you're going to fold your work inside out. You have your two tails here. Be working all the way up. You can take either one, doesn't matter. How do I do it? Well, because this one here, I'll be working up that edge there. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to go across. And I'm going to work up this one. How do I do it? What I do is I just loop it in. Let's loop it in the next one. I loop it in. And I loop it around. And over. Just looping, looping, looping all the way up. It's a little bit short, so I've got to keep an eye on that. Depending on the length of the tail, I can go quite far. Remember, this is going to be washed, it's going to be worn. And then at a certain point, just go a little bit more. Certain point, I have the option of a sharp pointed needle, which I do. Chenille. I will come back down. If I don't have the option of a sharp pointed needle, I'll just come back down with the darning needle. I unravel. It's my normal way of ending off my tails. I unravel them a bit and I break into the fibers. See the fibers there? Breaking into them. And then when it gets washed, they'll become one. So you see how far down I'm going, which means if there's a fold over, this could stick out a little bit, this little tail when it's cut. I love working my tails away. It's actually, I quite enjoy it. As I said, if it's done properly, it won't come unraveled. This guy as well, let's work him away. Go up a bit. And then we start wrapping. Whoops. Make sure I wrap on only the one. bit easy the other angle to show. This is working from left to right, this wrap, and it feels a bit awkward. The other one ended just there. I want to go further because I actually need that row next to me to work this guy down. One more. Sometimes, see, it's such a good thing that I gave that extra quarter arm. I've never been able to finish this properly. And then it's so annoying, you have to work away a tail and work in another one just because you're a bit short and your yarn is sewed up. Unwrap it. Go across to the other row. And as you can see, it's fallen off my needle. So what I'll do is I'll put my needle in place first. Go all the way down to right there. And wrap it some more. Get all those plies separated. Pull it back a bit so it's lying in. And then with a pair of scissors, you can leave it a little bit sticking out. It's going to go away in the wash. Give it a tug and it's gone. This is the inside of the invisible seam. You can see it creates 3 rows, all the rest are 2. But when you go to the outside, there it is, 3. When you come to the outside, it's 2. It's this one here. Yes, if it was folded over slightly like that, yes, there would be 3. But it's not that obvious. But as I said, as this is a beanie, it's definitely a beanie for a child. It's got enough stretch for an adult, but it's just 1 centimeter shorter than my other ones. Let's see, this one here should be just a touch longer. Maybe not. Yeah, it's about 1 centimeter. It makes a difference. And there we go. Thanks for watching.